Okay. Okay. Whoops, what's going on? Okay. Okay. Are we good? Can everybody hear me? It's all good? Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Yeah, but like I was saying, so it's not just like decentralized in terms of everybody can make their own website. It's also decentralized in the fact that like internet infrastructure is like made out of these different nodes, and not like a center where like a center that is upstream everybody's computers and just takes information downstream from there. Yeah. It's interesting because also like maybe you know that like railroads and telephone lines in like the 19th century, those were pretty similar in that way that they were like all over the place, and actually telephone lines were built like in alignment with railroad track. And like somewhere like the Grand Central Station is actually just like a place of traffic rather than like a center. Okay, but let's talk about like torrents and like torrent technology. Even the name torrent, like has this like aesthetics of like liquidity and stuff like that, or even like streaming, same thing. Okay, so anyway, when you torrent something, you're basically downloading a file that somebody else is uploading. Maybe I didn't make this clear, but torrent technology is like what you use for like on the Pirate Bay when you want to download these movies or whatever. Okay, so you like, for example, I just download a movie, and it's like it's already on my device. I can then upload it to someone else who can download it. That's what's called seeding. And yeah, like the blockchain, which as you might know is like the technology that Bitcoin uses, that the NFT uses, that all these whatever cryptographic technologies use. So, and how the blockchain works, like I think it like could take us back to like another version of this early internet, in the sense of basically not having to deal with these huge tech giants. Okay, so one aspect that's really interesting to me of how Bitcoin works is that like you have these two identities. One being your pseudonym, which is like it's just like the display name, like as if you wore like a mask, but it was a specific mask. Like people knew you from the mask, like MF Doom or something like that. But you also have like an actual identity. And your actual identity is encrypted in like everybody else, is like everybody else's units. And so for me, like this also like feels like it's a continuation of like or like it and colonialism share a similar structure, which is that like that the body is no longer like in this one place or has this one corporal form. It's sort of it exists simultaneously in a bunch of places. Okay. But fluidity isn't only about like homogenization. Fluidity can be like about infiltration. So like think of critique like as a literary form. This is like a necessarily like modern literary form. Like Plato wasn't doing critique. And and what is like the Protestant Reformation like, if not a critique of the institutional legitimacy of the Catholic Church? So if we look at, there's this really interesting like difference between debate and critique. So debate being like one sort of takes over the other. You have you have these two things. Whereas critique really is like it's not about like disproving as much as it about like showing implicit assumptions that like another author made. It's not like even really directly like negating the text or proving it wrong. It's just showing the limits of the kind of knowledge that again, that this text is producing. And in that way, it's sort of like we said, it's like colonialism because, like again, because how shall I put this? Excuse me, yeah, because it's not like one territory taking over the other. Rather, like it's about like infiltrating it. What does that mean? Like, so when you have, sorry, confused for a sec. Anyway, so like it's about, if you will, like the relationship between the text that is being criticized and like truth. Like it's about like the faculties like of truth, and what a critique is, it's simultaneously, again, it's the relation to that one text has with the truth, and at the same time it's like an attack on that. So it's like modernity in that sense, that it's both like an object and a relation, like yeah. And another way of putting critique is circumvention. So, and also when you look at like cryptocurrency, you can definitely see that as a form of like circumvention of, you know, mainstream financial institutions. Yeah, you maybe have heard about Abu Ubaidah recently from Hamas saying, if you want to finance the resistance, that's how you do it. You do it through Bitcoin because it doesn't go through these institutions. And I think in a lot of ways, this is also what remote closeness is doing, in that it doesn't like try to find a vaccine so we can have an exhibition. That would be kind of absurd. Rather, what it does is to find a way around it, like find a place where COVID can't get us. And so I want to leave you with this video, and then we can just do questions and a discussion, I guess. So I'm going to turn off my video, and I'm going to this video.
Are we supposed to hear something?
Okay. These are my sources real quick. Whoops. Okay. And yeah, let's do questions.
Thanks, Liam. So if people are Zoom literate, please raise your hand or just type in the chat if you want to ask a question. So we do this orderly.
Come on, guys, don't be shy. You can totally like tear me a new one. Go for it.
Could you stop sharing screen? Maybe that's helpful.
Okay.
You're looking at a screen.
1 sec. Okay, stop sharing.
I'll start with a question.
Great.
Maybe it's a bad question to start with, but maybe
right.
it might start a cool conversation. So what? That's kind of my question. So what?
So what?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know what to say other than like, well, this is just really different from what was there before, and like, I guess like maybe like sometimes we kind of just see like modernity or whatever, everything like melting as just or rather like we don't see it, or we just see it as you know, maybe to like put it like in a stupid way, like just like the way things are, or like a neutral state, whereas like it is this historical thing, it's and it's pretty different. It's the specific thing. That's it.
So maybe then you can go to Mac user's iPad question of wanting to
Let me
know.
look at that. One sec. Okay. Mac
I feel like
users,
it's
could you
very
please sum up the thesis or main idea? Okay. So I guess well you have like from like the top, like you have these two distinct bodies, which like, you know, you put them together, you put them in like a montage, and they create this like, yeah, this thirdness. But also you have like this relation can itself like become a sort of object. And yeah, like how that relates to modernity is that like I like to put it this way, it is sort of like metaphorical, but like you could look at the whole like planet as like a set of liquids, some of which are like solid and some of which have like melted. And so yeah, water or even air, sometimes like, you know, that which is sort of smooth, if you will. Yeah, to me, or I think in some sense it can be seen as like geography as such, or like this sort of neutral state that even precedes this distinction. So main thesis, I don't know about a thesis, but I think there's like a structure I want to show, or like, yeah, I would say there's a structure I'm trying to show. I'm going to look at Thomas' question. Okay.
So Muhammad Hajjaj is saying, it does feel like modernity is melting. Montage feels very fitting, eventually becoming increasingly homogeneous, perhaps. This is not a question as much as it's a comment. Andrea, could you say more about the montage images shown in the end?
About the montage images shown at the end? Hold on.
And then Paula followed up with, could you explain the montage how the montage creates proximity? So maybe you can do
right.
one story.
Okay. Right. But she was talking about the, I think Paula's talking more about the beginning, if I'm not mistaken. And Andrea's more talking about the end. Okay, so Andrea, maybe you want to get on the mic and tell us where exactly you mean. Hello?
Okay, she can't use the mic.
Okay, maybe she put it in the chat.
The concluding images. So maybe go back
right,
in the slides.
No problem. Okay. So I guess these two. So just what they're about in general. So I'm going to read the question one more time so I can answer it properly. Okay. Okay, so I guess like how, like I'm just gonna talk about, I guess, how this relates to everything, which is that like when we're talking about like the internet and the way that it has all these like different nodes and not a center, you no longer like have this this like distinct body. And yeah, like how that, again, how that relates to montage, I guess, is the same way that it's somehow not like the internet is not just this one thing, it's somehow like these several things. Is that satisfying? Yeah, Muhammad, it's fine if it was a comment. Okay.
Can I add something? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Faris, please. Hi.
Hi, Liam. So practically, if I understand you well, you're saying practically that capitalism is the image itself, because you can put anything with anything. Like you can put tomatoes and onions, because capital liquefied all codes. Now, yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, I'm gonna go back to this one. One sec. because I think this one maybe can help answer. So, like, yeah, no, like, I guess capital or modernity, we can, to some extent, use these two terms like interchangeably. Like,
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it is like a thing. It is a presence. It's not like, what I'm saying is it's not just a sort of like an epoch or just a relation. It is like a thing in itself. But at the same time, like at the same time, it is like a relation in that it has like this simultaneous presence where your participation in it has already been precluded. Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah.
yeah, I understand that you take it as a montage machine that is a thing that puts anything with anything, decodify all codes, patriarchy, decodifies all society,
sure.
and then you can mix. You can put anything with anything, but there's a missing thing. I think is that capital. There's a code that it didn't liquefy, which is private property. Which is actually all this decodification is recentered on one thing, which is that it has to contribute to the owner of private property, which is a code that doesn't liquefy. And so it's true that capitalism brought in a whole series of decodification, destruction of values, codes, whatever we want. But all this destruction and liberation was anchored onto the privatization of the means of production. I think I don't know what you do with this little,
why not?
Things that resist so far the. So we don't see it in the montage, or else capitalism would be the real of the image itself, meaning matter where you can put anything with anything.
Okay.
You see what I mean? It would be like.
No, I see. Yeah. So does that mean that like capitalism is private property? Like you don't
no,
really. It's not.
No, it's a montage, I think, of modernity of capitalism, because here we're equating them. It's on one hand to liquefy, but in order to anchor all this liquidity on a private bank account. So the montage is not liquid. It's I would think it like that. It's a liquidity that goes into a private bank account, which is one of these big So this is why I don't think capital is real, because the real would be to liquefy without a bank account, meaning without a territory that will swallow all of that. This is my. I would do it like that. Yeah.
Okay. Paula had a question. Paula, do you wanna say your question again? So I'm gonna look in the chat for it.
Paula asked, "How does montage create proximity?" But Faris, I want to get back to your point right after Liam answers this one.
Basically, I mean, what I really meant is that you have these like both things. Like when you put them together, you have like this image of proximity. What I'm trying to say here, I guess, is that they're both arms. Like I said with with that sentence, which was like we're kind of remote from each other, or we're distant from each other because it's like an intimacy with the virus. So yeah, like they function together. If you want to be intimate with something or close to something, you gotta be distant from something else. I think that was the point. Yeah, Paula, do you want to add to that or ask for a further question? Or
I want to add to that actually. There's a very interesting study being conducted or has been conducted on chimpanzees in a sanctuary. And they're measuring the levels of oxytocin or oxytocin, whichever one. One is a drug, one is the chemical. I'm talking about the chemical in the brain that usually is associated in pop culture or pseudoscience with love and community and intimacy. And which means that you only release this chemical when you're with people that you love, or the release of this chemical is how community is formed on a neuroscientific level, when actually they found out that this chemical is released when you see someone who's not in your close circle. So it is
Okay.
actually an association through detachment, like an attachment, but that occurs biologically through the act of detaching rather than the act of attaching. Like you would expect this chemical to make you love others around you. Actually, this chemical seems to arise when it's with people you're not necessarily in the same community with.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What do you say? It wasn't I think Oxycontin is the drug. What was the one you said?
Oxytocin.
Oxytocin. Okay, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I think someone said something in the chat. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
That
Paula
was
said
it.
that's super interesting. Okay.
But I want to go back to Faris's
yeah.
point about
Yeah.
how capital doesn't liquefy everything, and I'm very close to his I guess feelings about capital, but at the same time, there's a tiny voice inside my head that's saying we will be eventually liquefied alongside the concept of private property. Like private property exists as long as we exist, and so this liquefaction will happen once we are extinct, I would say, or in the post-human. But Muhammad raised his hand, Liam, just so you know. Muhammad and I raised their hands. So
okay, Muhammad, what do you got?
Yes, I'm not sure if this is gonna be, if I'm gonna add too much saying this, but regarding the liquefaction thing, could we use an example of the capitalism liquefying something, for instance, how we saw, it's Pride Month right now, so how you see the different perspectives of companies in like Western Europe or North America versus in the Middle East. Like, and that's not because they truly believe in those things, it's because of the capital. Can we use this as an example of how it liquefies, because it's liquefying like ideology? It's, you know, it's all about capital. So like there's a famous picture I saw on Twitter that was going on of BMV, I believe. They have been, for instance, at some point they had a Nazi symbol.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Along the blue and white squares, and now they have the pride flag and the blue and white squares. And at some point they had whatever flag, and which was also controversial. Could this be used? I'm not sure if I completely got it, but could this be used?
I think you're definitely onto something. Yeah, because like I think I like quoted Marx at some point saying that like everything is reduced to like the money relation. So yeah, like on an explicit level, you have them being these like different things, whether it be like pride, like companies doing pride in Europe versus companies doing pride in the Middle East. Like, yeah, they seem different, but like they're both like they're both companies basically, or they're both whatever, doing it or not doing it for like out of profit incentive. I think you could say that. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I just wanted to bring to an example that it's closer to my my reality, so I could maybe get it a little more.
Okay. You can ask about it, I think. But anyway, maybe Aya had a question.
Hi. It's not really a question. It's actually a comment. From a personal point of view, I don't really think that capitalism is about inclusivity or liquefying barriers. I think it's more about actually creating borders and fragmenting, let's say, whether it was society or like creating borders. But sometimes you use the term modernity, which I think it's more of the correct term, because modernity, well, I studied architecture, so modernity in architecture is about creating a universal image for buildings where you remove these barriers or these differences. So maybe the term that is more fitting to this scenario, let's say, is modernity rather than capitalism.
Right. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. I mean, how I tend to define modernity is just it's civilization amongst capital. But yeah, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, we obviously still have territory, and we obviously still have whatever distinct nation states or what have you. But yeah, I think like
I think it would be useful for you to explain what you mean by capitalism, modernity, because
Okay.
maybe that would
Sure.
make it easier for us
Sure.
to agree.
Right. So, but if I was like, I can do that, but like, I think I would be leaving the presentation a little bit. I think that's fine. I mean, the definition, I guess, that I'm comfortable with, or that I align with, of capitalism is like a, how should we call it, like a self-propelling process. Like you have, the Marxist MCM prime, where pre-capitalism you had CMC, which was commodity, money, commodity, where money was just a formalization of property. But with capitalism, money basically, it like expands by itself, and like yeah, this is like the basic like accelerationist like insight of what capitalism is. Yeah, so that's how I'm using it, and that's what I think it is. Okay, I'm gonna check the chat. Okay, no one said anything in the chat.
But I think it's interesting. I mean, we're out of time also, so we can either continue the discussion. There are interesting points that were brought up, like does capitalism liquefy everything? Does it liquefy private property? Is it capitalism? Is it modernity? Are they opposing forces, or are they one force? So I'd say either feel free to drop off the lecture, or stay, and we can dive deeper into these two questions.
Come on, you guys. Anybody? Joseph, do you have anything to say? What did you think of the whole thing?
I thought it was very interesting.
Okay.
It does sound to me like you've identified, of course, the by these combinations that happen over time in the course of history. There's it seems to me that new things are produced by those combinations. So in fact, you're almost saying the opposite of the Marx quote, right? Marx says that it dissolves, but of course, in fact, what you're seeing in these montages is new creation, new meanings.
Right.
But maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
No, I think you're definitely like on something. I think like part of the important idea is that like the internet we have now, like with Facebook and Google, is like a really good example of how there's also the tendency to reconsolidate, or like put it in Deleuze's terms, re-territorialize, and like regain this this sort of distinct solid state. But then again, the deterritorialization, or the melting, or the atomization happens again, like I think we're seeing with the blockchain. I was actually, Joseph, I was interested to hear your opinion like about these, because like I felt like this was this was like more where like you'd come from, like in your own interests. But yeah.
Well, I like your reading. I think the visual analysis is I mean, that's exactly spot on, right? I mean, that's what they say, and then they make a good pair, right? And I think they're both and the text overline that you put on top of them, right, makes it more obvious, like where the kind of there's a very careful sense of perspective that's being drawn, different narratives from different points of view, from one side of the ocean to the other, which I think is presumably the point you're trying to get at, right? That the story is being told a little bit differently in each one. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think you're right. Okay. Anybody else got anything to say? It can be like a tangent a little bit, that's fine.
I did have a curious question. Right, you started with the puffins, right?
Right, yeah, let's go to that one.
And I mean, Audubon, these are fabulous books, right? But I guess like the puffins are chosen presumably because they are on both sides of the Atlantic.
Right.
Yeah. And so like
and because they fly and they swim.
Right. Okay. So then they seem they're good metaphors for the traveling across the Atlantic and for this kind of combination of a kind of North Atlantic world. And then okay, super. That's I guess yeah, I wanted to hear more about.
All right. Fantastic. Yeah. No, I really love this etching. Okay.
They're also, I guess, like maybe I could add, they're also like distinctly American.
Yeah.
You know, when like this book, this big book, I think there's like some sort of project that's written that he goes on. It's like this 19th century thing. He's probably sent out from the Smithsonian or something, and he produces this fabulously big book with all these amazing drawings of all these great birds that are. And I guess like most nations were doing this, or most of the Western nations were doing this, right, in Europe at the time, in this kind of process of collecting and categorizing and labeling and stuff that's going on. And America has their own version of this, right? There's this big mapping projects when they send, I forget the names, these two cartographers over there, out from Washington DC, and they're particularly celebrated too in America. This big book, right? Like if you go to any major museum, like the Met or the National Gallery or the Getty or something, you can buy modern edition reprints of this book, modern editions of them, and they're usually huge and lavishly produced, very, very expensive. And the Audubon, maybe I'm mispronouncing that, society is still running, right? And they still have their work, and so it seems like it's particularly bound up with the sense of nationhood, I think, in a kind of early America.
Okay. Yeah. I think like this is like some book or some like art historical text. But yeah, I think like in the 19th century, like with all the whatever the kernel of like nationalism to come, like there was a big incentive for like you know, articulating like, you know, like a long-standing heritage and like actually having a museum and like a body of knowledge dedicated to like the territory. Yeah.
Would you distinguish because it seems to me that you have two kinds of territories. For me, Google, for example, or to centralize practically all human knowledge, as they say, on Google, for me, this is something, it's a form of territory, what we can call the privatization of anchoring the flow on a private thing, which is, I think, different from the reactions. Like if you take Iran, new code, like with the mullahs, I think faced with the decodification, you have reactions to recreate artificial territories, like the Iranian Revolution or fascism in general is seen as a reaction to this, which is a different type of territory from the centralization of money on private property. So I was wondering if in the images you have seen, be it natural history kind of reproductions or the paintings portraying the colonization process, if such distinctions are, I don't know, is it possible to find such distinctions, or is there something even in the way we produce paintings, or for me here I'm thinking about paintings while showing that can depict this passage? For me, the question, what would be the difference between Velázquez, let's say, or if you go even further, let's take Michelangelo, or even further to the medieval times, and really in the construction of the image, and images that started to be painted or produced at the era of the reign of capital and decodification. For me, is there something in the way we paint, we compose, etc.? Did you find something here, or?
Okay, just so I'm clear, you're asking me like about the paintings of like whatever the important moments of the history of capitalism versus paintings that are reacting to it? Is that what you're asking?
No, asking paintings which were painted before the event of colonialism / capitalism, which are still seemingly, which are classical in the way they are painted, apparently, or even late medieval times, and how the capitalist breakthrough change. So can you consider that, let's say, perspective maybe is a form of decodifying medieval painting? It's just a hypothesis or a wild
I understand.
Yes, maybe by quantifying the visual field to shortening distances is a form of codification of what used to be codified differently in the medieval painting. Here, maybe Joseph could help us in that. I don't have data on that, but what I'm trying to say is beyond this kind of just the illustration of the coming of the conquistadors and the coming of capital, can we think painting itself as having went through a decodification process in its construction? This is my question. Yeah.
Right. I think
I don't
know. Super complicated question. I mean, I obviously don't have like a super like rigorous answer, but like just intuitively, I think I would say like, well, we all know like how Vasari's book like sort of establishes art as like this separate sphere, but like and like a really interesting question for me is the Renaissance modernity or not? I wrote an essay for Joseph's class about that, and it was cool. So, but like I think my like general opinion on this would be that like the Renaissance is modernity, but retrospectively, and I would say this that partly because capital resists a kind of cause-effect relationship, and just that it is like MCM prime. It's this again, to put it in like Nick Land's words, like a positive feedback loop. Like it doesn't like it's like you can't really like put it in a specific like historical period because it's already like it's happening and no one like constructed it. But yeah. Joseph, do you have any thoughts on that? I don't know. That's what I think in general.
So funnily enough, yeah, it's a big and complicated question, and people have been addressing it for a number of years now, decades. And I mean, it both is and it isn't. I would say. I think like the funny thing about, if we're talking about the Renaissance in particular, it both is and isn't, right? I mean, it depends really on how you define all these things and what you're looking for, as I think you've said in the past. And I think what we do see, I think it's fair to say to reply to Faraz, is that it is true that we see the commodification of art for the first time. There's an art market, as in like things are being bought and sold and transported as commodity products like furniture or clothes or any other object that you would buy, and it's no longer decoration that's attached to the house or used for religious or functions, right? It's now like an item that is on sale and is produced speculatively as a product for a market that exists, that is assumed to exist by the producer. And then at the same time, you get Vasari, who's trying to elevate this particular product above other products as a kind of, into a special category that we now think of as art, that he's a kind of early part of that process. But these are, in the Renaissance at least, this is this is where we see some of these features, but they're not true at the beginning of the Renaissance. They're only really true at the end, and depending on again where you want to draw your lines, and so it's emerging. It's not really for the vast majority of the vast majority of people in the vast majority of the situations. It's still very much a kind of medieval world, weirdly. They're not anyway. Yeah, and so I think the oil paintings that we see. So these paintings are both oil on canvas. Oil paintings facilitate and are part of this process. You can roll them up and post them to people, and suddenly the art market explodes. And things change. Consequently, that does change the kind of images that get painted, the kind of subjects that get painted, the ways and iconography, the framing that we see here of the composition into a kind of theatre-like stage set on the left. This theatricality is a response to the market. And, pictures pictures of other products. You know, that's totally foreign in the Renaissance, in the medieval period. But this is late Renaissance. That's the kind of thing you start seeing in the late Renaissance. Yeah, as this transition to capitalism increasingly gathers pace in other formats around the political and economic world.
I guess I have a question for Faris. The thing I was, I guess, nervous about was, you know, like, because Faris talks like a lot about like an artist's talk kind of just ends up, you know, being about Marx or about Freud or something and not about the images. So I guess I was like a little bit like nervous that I went off on that kind of tangent. But like, I don't know, like I felt like that there wasn't like an intersection between like the form and the content. But like, I don't think one is reducible to the other. So I think I want to ask Faris two questions. Firstly being that, does he like, is when form matches content, is that like an image type? A, and B, I don't know, I guess, do you think I went off on too much of a tangent? Yeah.
Yeah, me what I understood is you're using the montage approach to describe capital. You're showing that actually capitalism is a form of montage, which is to put anything with anything. This is why I thought that you identified montage to the image at its degree zero. Practically, if you want to speak like, sorry for those who don't know that, like to the Bergsonian matter, meaning anything can interact with anything, which is the way Bergson conceives matter. So it's a materialism where I can put a tree with a tomato, with an Indian, with a building, and capital would actually open this possibility on the level of the what can come together. And for me, as far as I'm concerned, as a art critical approach to capital, I think I in quote, I like that because I think that the tools the art critics have, which are montage techniques, image types, and the like, are here reversed on the human sciences. Now, on the other hand, if I can allow myself, on the other direction, which is paintings which are relating to capitalism, I think here it's still on the level of narration, like we see Indians and yeah, but this is why my question was, can we think in the, I think the point Joseph brought that actually there's a deterritorialization of the painting because now it's not anymore neither, you know, a fresco nor something which is installed in a house, but something that you can take with you. And this allowed the commodification, commercialization, etc. I mean, this is perfect. But the idea is there something even more, meaning in the construction of the image itself? Me, I don't know. Like maybe perspective or something, I have no idea. Or maybe the way they frame or something that could also signify, that could, let's say, implement a decodification in the construction of the painting. For me, this is when form and content would meet more than the fact that we see colonial people with Indians, because here I don't see how this is a decodified painting as such. If you take the reading by Foucault of Manet, Foucault says that in the disciplinary phase of Capital, painting is decodified, if you can use this language, by being reduced to a surface, by meaning the construction becomes that of horizontals and verticals and so on and so forth, by removing the depths of the paint. So I'm just giving here an example of how how it's possible to relate form and content, because if you look at Manet's painting, actually it's an analytical painting. It's a painting to read, which is actually the same function of the eyes that you find in Fordist industrial plants and in Taylorist theories. So for me, from that point, it's possible to connect to the way we construct paintings in accordance to a capitalist context. Well, so this is why for me the question was, can we push it in the direction of finding constructivist traits through the different epochs of capital, let's say beginning with Renaissance, then Ancien Régime, disciplinary societies, and today the electronic era, that can reflect the mutation of the different mutation of capital. For me, this was, I'm sorry, I might be long, but if you take Vasari, Vasarely, not Vasari, Vasarely, the up artist and the virus image is really connected to the post-World War II context, which is purely optic sound kind of context. And I think these are the connections that I would say the form will fit content. And this is when, for me, yes, this is when we have an image type. Is it clear what I said? Or this is how
I think somewhat, yeah. So okay, no, I think it's fairly clear. Everyone, I think we have to wrap up, but thank you all for coming, and this was super fun for me. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself too. And yeah, I guess I'll let you all know when it's on YouTube. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm gonna stop recording. Okay.